All right, well, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Uh-oh. We got locked out, Michelle.
That's okay. We don't have a password, so just go ahead and click on it. You'll be good.
Right there. All right, we're good. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody today. I wasn't planning on trying to use this microphone, so can everybody hear me all right? All right, if I drop over the next 3 hours, let me know, wave your hand, and I'll speak up again. So as we get started here, so I want to kind of give you my background. Obviously, good marketing is often about telling a story, so I'll kind of tell you my story. So hopefully you can buy into that and get excited about learning from me today. So I'm originally from St. Louis, except for 5 months that I lived in Switzerland when I was in 3rd grade. So that was kind of a cool experience. My dad worked over there, works for Boeing, and he got transferred there for about a half a year. Then I went to St. Louis University High School and then WashU. So I kind of stuck in the same part of St. Louis for 8 years there. One of the more significant experiences that I had during that time was during freshman year. I'm sitting in a math class and, kind of tuning out. My friends and I are joking around, it's just kind of having some fun. And they start passing a clipboard down through the classroom. And I'm like, what's this clipboard, right? So my friend next to me signs up, passes it to me. There's a bunch of names on it. So I just put my name on it, right? I had no idea what it was, to be honest. I got a phone call later that night, and it turned out it was signing up to learn more about an internship program. So as a freshman, I'm like, I don't know, you're supposed to do internships when you're a freshman. I'll go check it out. It turned out that it was an internship for learning to run your own small painting business. So it was a business internship. And I was studying engineering, but I was like, well, I don't know. I've always thought, inventing a product and selling it would be kind of cool. I'll check it out. So I went through this whole application process. There was like 6 interviews. I later found out when I got to the other side of the interviews that you didn't really need all 6. It was just to make it feel challenging. But of course, at the time I was like, man, this is intense. I'm excited, right? So I ended up getting the job and I worked at College Works Painting for 6 years. So I started as a freshman. By the time I was a junior, I was running a $500,000 team of interns who were running their own painting businesses. So we were doing really well, one of the top producers in the country that year. And then when I graduated from WashU, I ran that program as the vice president of marketing and sales for the St. Louis division. So essentially I was in charge of teaching and training, about 25 to 30 interns on how to run their painting businesses in the St. Louis area. So I like to bring that up because a lot of my marketing experience comes from that 6-year period. I ran a lot of marketing teams. We did a lot of door knocking. So we were those kids, coming by knocking on your door at 6 o'clock when you're trying to eat dinner and asking you if you need a paint job, right? But it worked. We got a lot of results from that. We also did a lot of flyer distribution. So when I first started Connect Marketing, and this is about 4 years ago, my experience had come from that. And so we started out doing door knocking and passing out flyers for contracting companies. So that's kind of where my background started. And then since then, we've implemented a lot of digital marketing. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is actually stuff that I've taught myself over the past 4 years. And the good news is that these are things you can learn on the internet, you can teach yourself. I'm going to go in as much depth as I can today, but I definitely encourage you to look up free courses online, get on YouTube. There's all kinds of interesting information out there about how to do your marketing on the internet. So that's how I started Connect. One thing I skipped over a little bit there is Case Cooley. I will mention Case Cooley just because it is a lot of fun. So that's a Case Cooley right there in the corner. See if I can get my, there we go, laser pointer to work. A Case Cooley is a sleeve that fits around a cold case of beer and keeps it cold for 10 hours without any ice, right? So it's like a koozie for an entire case of beer. So you can imagine I invented that in college when we were going tailgating and having fun. WashU doesn't have tailgating. It's a Division III school. Nobody goes to the sporting events, to be honest. So I went to Mizzou with my buddies and we would tailgate there, right? So I had some friends that would just buy a cold case of beer and try to drink it while they were tailgating before it got warm. Not the healthiest decision to make, probably not the safest thing to do. So we're like, hey, what if we just put a sleeve around this, keep it cold for a few hours? And that's where the Case Cooley came from. My grandma helped me put the first prototype together. We messed up her sewing machine in the process, so there's kind of some mixed feelings there. But eventually got them manufactured, and we've been selling those for about 6-7 years now. Actually, it's been longer than that. I've been out of college about 7 years now. So that's what I did in the meantime. So that was kind of between my College Works Painting time and when I started Connect Marketing. And one of the main reasons that I started Connect, I didn't really think about this consciously when I started the business, but it was because at the time I could not figure out how to market Case Cooley. right? So as you'll notice with a lot of small businesses that people start, a lot of times you start a business to solve a problem you have, right? So I hadn't thought about that really consciously, but the further I got into it, now that I know how to market my Case Cooley product, I realized that's part of why I started Connect. So wanted to really quickly touch on two of the main focuses that we have at Connect Marketing. We're not going to be talking much about our business today. We're going to be doing educational stuff. But number one, it's like we have a feeling that Facebook and social media is really cool, but unfortunately it's also tended to shift people's attention from meeting up in person and getting to know each other to meeting each other on the internet. And unfortunately, we're starting to see that psychologically we don't work that way, right? Now it's an okay substitute, but it kind of hurts us. We feel a lot more lonely now. The rates of depression are a lot higher. And so one of our missions in Connect Marketing is, hey, how do we use marketing and advertising dollars to reestablish that sense of community in a neighborhood? So that's one of our main missions, is that we really like to go into specific neighborhoods and use some of the marketing techniques we're going to talk about today to try to bring people together in those communities, right? So we might promote an event and say, hey, why doesn't everybody come down? You can meet your neighbors, get to know them. We might focus on particular interests. So sometimes our small business clients will have topics that they like to, hobbies, things they like to do outside of their business, and we'll focus on that in the videos. So keep that in mind as we're going through the training today, is that we really want you to think about this as focusing on how do you help other people, right? So what can you do to kind of build that sense of community? And then we say, number two is to make small businesses local, famous, and help them grow. So if you're able to help people out, in return, they're going to help you. So that's really the message behind this. So we're going to be talking about some more kind of promotional types of things because we only have so much time today. But I do want you, as you're working on these things yourself, to be thinking about how can I help the people that I want as customers, right? So the more I can help them, the more they're going to be excited about working with me. So before we move forward, I just want to learn a little bit about the audience here. So quick show of hands, how many people are small business owners? All right, so over half the room, that's awesome. For the rest of you, how many of you are in sales, or who does sales? All right, so we got a lot of salespeople too, good. All right, how many of you have a Facebook business page already set up? Okay, so I think we have the majority. So I was gonna skip that step today, so it sounds like that's all right. So if you don't have a Facebook page set up, come talk to me during one of the breaks. I can show you. It takes 3 steps. Facebook makes it extremely easy because they want you to set up those pages. We're going to assume you have that as we're moving forward. So if you don't have one and you don't see some of the buttons I'm going to be referencing, that's why. All right. So let's start out by just talking a little bit about why is Facebook so important. Most people, I think, understand this stuff at this point. But number one is that Facebook has over 2 billion monthly active users. So Facebook is the largest community in the entire world, right? There's no country that has 2 billion people. 68% of US adults are Facebook users. So a couple of years ago, one of the fears of marketing on Facebook was, oh, it's all college kids, it's all young people. Well, that's totally changed, right? I mean, a lot of adults are on there, and if anything, they're the most active category now. If you look at a lot of the teenagers, they're using Snapchat, they're using Instagram. They use Facebook to a degree, but they're not as active, right? So the good news there is the people with the money are now on Facebook. You're not probably advertising to high school kids in a lot of cases, right? 53% of US internet users are on Facebook several times a day, right? So if you think about it, half the people using the internet at all are on Facebook basically constantly. If you're on there several times a day, like you're checking it when you wake up, you're checking it at lunchtime, it's probably distracting you during work or school. I can get lost on Facebook for hours looking at articles and videos and things, right? Only 13% of internet users are not on Facebook. So, we're getting to the point where it's kind of becoming like email. Almost everybody has an email address. I every now and then meet someone who doesn't have an email address. It shocks me. I don't know how you could have gotten this long without doing it. Facebook's kind of the same thing now, where it's like it is becoming rare to find people that aren't on there. So that's the power of it as an advertising network, is you can target almost anybody you want in a way that we've really never been able to do before. And then the bottom part here, the average Facebook user spends 50 minutes per day using Facebook. Obviously, that's the equivalent of watching like 1 full hour TV show if you were going to compare it to TV advertising. All right, so today what we're going to try to do, I want to make sure that we have time to kind of digest each piece. We're going over a ton of content. I'm going to move really quickly. This is the first time we've done this full 3-hour presentation before, so I want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask questions. So my goal here is to do kind of a 40-minute section. The first one's going to be on just some quick general marketing rules that you should always follow in your marketing, and also how to define an audience on Facebook. That's the first step you're going to need to take to create an ad. The second section we're going to do is creating video with a smartphone. So what we're going to try to show you today is how to make your own content without having to spend a whole bunch of money. You don't necessarily need to hire a video person, although there's plenty of cases where you should. Definitely an advocate of it. But you're going to be able to make content just using your cell phone. That's why I brought this stuff today. We're going to also show you how to spend a couple $100 and set up your own little video studio still using your cell phone, right? So that's going to be kind of a useful topic. And then the third thing we're going to focus on is how to then take that video and that audience and combine them in an ad and show it to those people. And then here's the real exciting part, is how to then track who watches your video. So who actually spent their time and cared enough about what you were selling to watch your video, because those are the people you want to stay in front of, right? So if there's 5,000 people and 200 of them watch your video, you want to stay in front of those 200 people. And that's what we're going to focus on in the last part of our presentation today. So we have breaks. I do kind of, the way I wrote this out was I was thinking people would ask questions at the end of each segment. But if you do have a question that comes up, feel free to ask it. If I'm getting too many, I might say, hey, let's wait till the end. But let's kind of keep this interactive. We'll keep it a little more exciting that way. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we want to look at today are the rules of marketing. So you can talk to a lot of marketing people. Everybody kind of has their own set of rules. These are the 4 rules that we think are probably the most important, at least in our business. But there are books on these things, the 52 laws of marketing. There can be more. These are just the ones we like to focus on. So those 4 rules are: number 1, understanding your audience. So who are the people who you should be selling to, and making sure that you understand that as best as possible. It's not always the easiest thing to figure out, but understand it as best as you can before you ever start advertising, right? There's a lot of business owners I've met with who just kind of try things. Somebody called me and they said, hey, you should be on my, advertise on my radio show. So I decided to give it a try. Well, if you know who your audience is first, then you can ask that question. Well, who listens to the show? Is it the audience I'm looking for or not? So that's number 1. Number 2 is you want to have a clear and strong position. So what that means is that you want to be able to talk about your own business in a way that people understand and that they already see you as the best at what you do. So I'll elaborate a little bit on that in the future. These are things that we do with a client when we first bring them on board. It takes hours to process through. So if it's not 100% clear after that, this is okay, right? There's books you can read on this stuff. But that's another good step, is if you know who you're talking to and then you know how to talk to them. That's the way to think about your position, is how to talk about your business in a way that's exciting to those people. Number 3 is stay consistently in front of your audience. So this is where I want to do a quick survey. So who here has ever sent direct mail? Anybody ever tried direct mail? All right. So you bought a list and you sent mail to that list. Has anybody here ever stopped before they got to 5 mail pieces? So you sent less than 5 mail pieces to your list. All right, so you got a couple hands there. So this is one of the things we see violated the most often, is not staying consistently in front of the same people. If you had a list and you sent probably less than 7 pieces, you did not send enough mail. That's just the truth, unless you were doing a whole bunch of other things to get in front of those people. So we want to make sure that we're staying consistently in front of them. The other example is, you can't propose to someone on a first date, or you probably shouldn't, right? Doesn't usually work out very well. So you don't want to propose to your customers on the first interaction. So if the very first thing you ever say is like, hey, come use my product or service, here's a discount code, that's the first thing they've ever heard from you. All they think is, who's this discount company, right? Why can they offer me a discount on day 1? They must be charging too much. And then the last thing here is your advertising should serve and benefit that audience. So again, that was one thing I mentioned that we like to focus on in our company, is how are we helping these people, right? Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I do want to talk about your customer avatar. This is how we define our audience. So you can see here, this is a set of questions that we like to go over with our customers. And the idea here is that as humans, we're very good at telling stories and being compelling when we're talking to one person, if we understand that person, right? So if you have a best friend, you've known them for a long time, you know who they are, you can probably tell them really good stories and get them to laugh and they're excited to listen to you. What we're not good at doing is telling stories to broadly defined groups of people, right? So that's the idea here, is that we're gonna talk about ourselves and we're gonna tell better stories if we know who we're talking to, and if that is a person as opposed to a big crowd of people. So if I say, hey, tell me something that's interesting for somebody between the age of 30 and 50. Well, that might be the range of your client's ages, but that's not a good definition to come up with a compelling story, right? If I say that person's 42, you're gonna have a much better time getting right in front of that person, right? So this is what we do, is we go through and we define every aspect of the ideal client. The easiest way to do this, if you want to do it yourself, is just to simply call and interview your favorite customer, right? It's kind of a no-brainer at that point. We'll sometimes do that, or we'll sometimes just kind of quiz them. But you want to make sure that this is as accurate as you can. The idea here is you have who they are and how they think type of questions. And once you've answered all of these questions, you're going to be able to come up with not just interesting content, but you're going to come up with a whole bunch of topics you can talk about. So has everybody have you heard the term content marketing before? Is that familiar? Okay. So when you create content marketing, one of the real frustrating things is you have to sit down and like, okay, what am I going to create, right? What should I write about? What are my topics? Once you've done this, you never have to ask that question again, because you have a whole bunch of topics in here. So these sections, especially at the bottom, their interests, pain points is a big one. Definition of success. Those are types of things that can generate a whole bunch of ideas for you. So that's why this is so powerful. So again, I don't have time to go too in depth on this, but the idea here is if you create this avatar, you're going to have a very clear idea of who your ideal audience is. So here's kind of an example of an avatar we've created for one of our customers. It's a 38-year-old woman. So the idea is you come up with 3 sections, their basic profile. This is really useful, is understanding kind of what does their typical day look like. Because if you understand that, you can understand when to put advertising in front of them. And then goals and interests is a big one for what kinds of things to write about. So this is kind of my favorite, because this is where I can look at this and say, okay, what do I have in common with that person? So what are interests they have that I have too? And I can talk about that stuff all day. People get bored if you talk about your business all day, right? They get excited if they see you talking about things that they also happen to be interested in. So I'm a big fan of soccer. I like to play when I get the chance. So anytime I can talk to customers about soccer, like they get excited, I get excited. It's a way of us building rapport. You can do that with video too. So anything you would have a conversation with someone in person about, you can also put in your video content. So the second thing I mentioned was positioning. So I'm going to briefly cover this, but the idea here is you want to think about how should someone look at your business. So for instance, Vanessa and I started Connect Marketing a little bit under 4 years ago. We are not the biggest marketing firm in St. Louis, right? So we cannot say we're the #1 marketing firm in St. Louis, because that would be deceitful. And then somebody will say, well, how many employees do you have? Oh, well, 2 and part-timers, and it's like, that doesn't make any sense, right? So the idea is not to lie here, but the idea is to talk about who you are in such a way that you're automatically #1. So we're not the biggest generalized marketing firm in St. Louis, but we are the biggest flyer marketing firm in St. Louis. So one of our main services is Facebook ads. The other is that we do door-to-door flyer distribution. So we have a special kind of sticky flyer we put out on front doors in neighborhoods around St. Louis. No one else does it. And so it's easy for us to say that we're the best at that and we're #1, and it's not deceitful, right? So that's the idea here, is what is your niche? What is it that you do that no one else really quite does the same way? Or the flip side is, who is it that you serve? So if you have a really specific kind of person, you might be able to say, so for instance, another thing we talk about is we work with a lot of real estate agents. So we might be able to say we're the best marketing firm in St. Louis at working with real estate agents, because there really aren't other firms that do that, right? And again, you do this well, the idea is not that everyone in town is going to work with you. Most small businesses would probably collapse if everybody in town came to their door in one day, right? What you want though is that perfect customer to be more attracted to your business. So that's what this does, right? So if we say we're the #1 flyer marketing firm in St. Louis, the kinds of companies that want to use flyer marketing are going to notice that, and everybody else is going to essentially ignore it, and that's exactly what we want. So if you do your positioning right, you have 2 benefits. #1, you're going to get more of your ideal customer. And then the slightly more controversial benefit is you're going to attract less of your bad customers. So just a quick show of hands. Anybody here have a customer they've worked with in the past that they kind of wish they had never picked up in the first place? Right? So when we were doing CollegeWorks painting, one of the favorite things we were taught that we all screwed up was your favorite customer is going to be the one you say no to before you ever take the job, right? So we all went out, we didn't say no to that person we know we should have, and 3 weeks later, after 3 weeks of headaches, we were like, you're right, if I had said no to this person, that would have been my favorite thing I'd done all summer, right? So that's what you're also accomplishing with good positioning, is that you're also avoiding the people that are not a good fit for you or your business. All right, so consistent marketing. So this is one of my biggest pet peeves. I just cannot stand when I talk to a small business owner and they tell me about all the things that they've tried in marketing and how marketing just doesn't work and they don't trust marketers. And I get it. I mean, there are a lot of marketers out there that can be deceitful. A big thing that a lot of marketers do is overpromise. Oh, you're going to get so much results, it's going to be great, and then they don't, right? But this is the number one thing they screw up, is that they give up way too early. Right? So there are plenty of cases where somebody has done something for months and seen very little results, only to 2 or 3 months later have a huge return on their investment, right? So this is basic psychology. This is not complicated stuff. Most people are not going to respond the first time they hear about you, right? There are some that will, and there are some people that will respond to, seeing a coupon code and decide to call, right? But those aren't really the ideal customers, right? They're not the people that are the best fit for your business in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, they're the discount shopper that's going to jump ship as soon as somebody else offers a discount, right? So we like to focus on, if you serve that audience and you stay consistently in front of them, it works the same way as getting to know somebody in person. So like my example earlier, if you're dating somebody, you usually, small talk on the first date, get to know them a little bit, and things kind of progress from there. The same thing should apply to your marketing. So when you start advertising, the first thing you should be trying to do is introduce yourself, right? Talk about small talk kind of conversations. This is where those interests from your avatar come in really handy, right? What are the things that this person finds interesting? How do I want to attract them? And then as you go, and as you're tracking who's watching these videos, because that's what we're focused on today is video marketing, you can start to get more in depth. If somebody's watched a couple 1-minute videos of you talking about how cool soccer is and how excited you are about it, and they're like, who is this person? Oh, they're an insurance agent. They haven't even talked about insurance yet. That's weird. Well, now you can start to show them 2 or 3 minute long videos. And then you can start showing them a 10-minute video. And then eventually you can ask them to come in and have an appointment with you, and they're going to feel like they know you, right? So it's going to feel like, hey, I'm talking to a friend. It's somebody I've seen a lot from already. And that's because you were consistently in front of them. The challenge of that, and this is something, this is a hard part, especially of content marketing, is you have to make a lot of content, right? You can't show them the same video 10 times. They're not going to watch it 10 times, right? So you do have to create different content as you go. But if you do that, over time, you're going to see good results. And then the nice thing is you just continue staying in front of that group. And those people get to know you better and better, and they start sending you referrals, and they start telling their friends about you. And this is how you build a following on social media. So if you've ever wondered, man, I've only got a few hundred likes on my page, how do I increase those numbers? That's how you do it, is you stay in front of the same people and you kind of let them get a chance to get to know you. So one simple rule here is the 7-touch rule. I actually think it's more like the 15-touch rule now because there's so much more advertising out there. But the basic idea is you should not give up on an audience until you've gotten in front of them at least 7 times. So if we were talking about direct mail, that would apply there. Send at least 7 pieces over a matter of at least a few months. Not 7 days in a row, that's probably a little too aggressive, right? Same to do with video, so that's what we're going to be talking about today, is you create that audience, and then how do you get in front of them at least 7 times? All right, and then the final one, and I feel like this should be kind of obvious, but it can be one of the more frustrating sides of things, is that it'd be great if you could go out, put up an ad today, and tomorrow have 10 new customers, and everybody always wants to know, what's the secret to doing that? That's why it's a secret, because there is no answer. There's not a good way to get 10 customers tomorrow unless you offer insane discounts or if you're willing to work with people you don't like. So you do have to take some time to serve your audience. So the more you think about this when you're creating content, the better you're going to do in the long term. So you're basically sacrificing, hey, I'm not going to put out a coupon tomorrow. I'm going to make a video that teaches people something. But hey, 6 months down the road, I'm going to have a lot more customers, and they're going to be a lot better customers, right? So you do want to make sure that you're educating. It can be entertaining. I try to tell people it's all about your personality. So whatever it is that you really kind of shine at, what's your best skill, highlight that as much as you can in your content and share that with people. All right, so we're coming back to the customer avatar, because now what we're going to do is we're going to take some of this, we're going to apply it to Facebook. So This is where the technicalities might get a little more challenging. We're actually going to get into the Facebook Ad Manager. So before I do that, just so I kind of know where we're at, who here has, and I'm not talking about boosting posts. If you've boosted posts, that's great. We're talking about something a little bit more advanced. So it's called the Ads Manager. So how many people have actually gotten into the Ads Manager on Facebook? Okay, so just a few. All right, so that's all right, because that's what we're really diving in today. So the reason I bring back the customer avatar is that this is why I love doing this, especially nowadays with customers first, is as soon as I have that avatar, I have all this stuff. Almost all of these categories are things you can target with Facebook ads, right? So if you're not familiar with this stuff, you might feel like, oh, this is a little bit creepy, because you're going to find out how much Facebook knows about you, which can be a little bit creepy, right? But these are all things that Facebook tracks and that you can create audiences around. So interests, ages, honestly the age of your children. So I can say, hey, I want people who have kids between the age of 3 and 5, and that's one of the things you can target on there, right? Pain points, we literally have a feature where you can target people who have bought pain medicine in the past 60 days. So they track your credit card information, and we can say, oh, you bought over-the-counter pain medication. It's not prescription pain medication, but yeah, you bought Advil or something. We can target that, right? Now, I can't see who those people are, so it's still anonymous, but we can say, that's who we want to target on here. So that's why you want to have your customer avatar in front of you when you go to set up these audiences. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is transition to a little bit of more of a live demo. All right, so is everybody, let's start from the beginning. Hopefully nothing, oh, actually. Sorry, this laptop's new to me, so I'm not as good at typing on it. So when you get in here, oh look, it's Tom. Tom, wave to everybody. This is Tom Lubieski, everybody. So when you're on, so this is your home page on Facebook, and the first thing you're going to do is come over to the left-hand side over here. And what you're looking for is this Ads Manager button. So this is where if you have not already set up a business page, you will not see this button. This button is only available to you if you have a business page, right? Because everything you do advertising has to be done through a business page. So if you don't have a business page, like I said, talk to me during one of the breaks. We'll talk about how to do it. But what you want to do is you're going to start by clicking on that button. And so now we're in the Facebook Ads Manager. So this is this is where things get a little bit new for you. This is going to be fairly complex if you've never seen it before. If you're not completely following, we are going to send some follow-up information after the presentation today. We're still waiting on whether or not we can get permission to actually show our recording of this presentation, so you might get that. But at the very least, we're going to make a checklist, and I'll make some shorter videos of all of this later to share with everybody. So if you lose me, don't freak out. I'll try to go kind of slowly as we go through this. So starting here, this is basically where you can look at the different campaigns you've run. So you can ignore the step I'm taking right now. We have a bunch of access to a bunch of different ad accounts. I'm just loading our main ad account, so you probably won't even have to worry about that. But so here's your home page, and this is where you can see what's going on with your current ads. So you'll see campaign names. So these are all the different campaigns we've run over the past few years. This is one that we have going right now. So if you're a real estate agent, you may have seen a video of me over the past few weeks because we've been promoting that. From there, these are your ad sets. And then these are the actual ads over here. So we're not going into that at the moment, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, so if you want to create an audience, so you can create an audience as you're making an ad, so you can kind of skip this step if you're setting up an ad for the first time, but I like to create the audiences separately so that I can kind of save them and keep them organized well. So to do that, you click on the Ad Manager button up here, and you come down to Audiences.
Can we do no line?
No, back there. We'll try it just a second.
Not sure which links will go off. Turn them all off.
There you go. Good guess. All right, good suggestion. So everybody can see that a lot better now? So I'm just going to repeat what I just did in case you missed it. So you click up here, and you come to the drop down, and you click Audiences. All right, so now that we're in here, we're going to create a new audience. All right, so there are a lot of ways that you can create audiences. I'm going to touch on a couple as we go through this. But our goal today is we're just going to show you how to create a basic demographic audience. So you click on Create Audience. In here, you're going to see Custom Audience, Lookalike, and Saved. So the one we're doing today is a saved audience. All right, so within here, obviously you want to give your audience a name. We're not going to name it yet because I'm not even sure what we're going to pick. We're going to let you guys kind of decide what you want to have in your audience. But you'll see as we scroll down here, the first thing is custom audience. We're ignoring that for now. That's a more advanced step we're not going to get into today. So you want to leave that blank. And then you got location. So almost always we're going to be, for small businesses, selecting St. Louis. So we go ahead and type in St. Louis. Now there's a few different versions of St. Louis that you can select in here. And once you do this, this is only going to show advertisements to people that live in that area. So always keep that in mind if you feel like you're not getting enough people on your list. Maybe your geographic targeting is too small. But there's the DMA market. That's going to be pretty significant. So I'll select that just to show you. If you select St. Louis DMA, it's that big, right? So we're getting a big kind of 150, 200 mile swath right there. So that might be too big. So if you don't like that, you can take it back out. You can target things like St. Charles. You can target zip codes, all that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to look at St. Louis City. And so what this does is it puts a pin right in the middle of the city, and it says everything within 25 miles, and that's something you can adjust. So we can bring it down, say 10, and I think it'll go up to a max of 50 there, right? So you can see that's still a lot smaller than that DMA that we were just looking at. So let's just go ahead and we'll leave it at 50. That's a pretty decent range. So does anybody working here feel like this is the range of their company?
Yep.
Okay, a few of you? Good. So we'll go ahead and work with that. So now what we've done, if we check this, is you'll see that we've narrowed it down to 1.8 million people. All right, so these are all between the age of 18 and 60 and over 65. Doesn't let you target explicitly above 65. And you can adjust that down here. So it does go all the way down to 13. I would imagine most people here are not advertising to 13-year-olds, although some of you might, right? So you can certainly target that. But we might want to say, hey, even 18-year-olds are a little too young for me. I want at least 25-year-olds. And then you can also limit the top. You can then select between all men or women. That's fine. You can, if you have a business that caters to one or the other. You can also target languages. So if you have a special, service you have for people that maybe aren't first English speakers, Spanish or something, you can target them as well. So keep that in mind. You may want to go ahead and just put in English in here, just to make sure you're not getting people that speak anything else. So you can see now we made a couple adjustments. Now we're down to 1.4 million people, right? So you're going to notice as you do this, you start to cut people out of the total list. I will say, don't ever advertise to 1.4 million people unless you have millions of dollars to put into your ads, right? That's just way too many. So we want to continue to narrow it. So this is where it really gets interesting, is when we get into the detailed targeting. So right now we're looking at people within 50 miles, 25 to 65 and up, and they speak English. And now is where we want to get a little more specific. So this is where we can get some audience interaction. Who wants to give me a kind of person that they like to target as their customer? College students, okay. Well, our problem is we just cut them out, but I'm going to put them back in. So in your case, we would probably adjust this. And what's the maximum age you like to target that you would think is still in college?
30.
30? Okay. All right, so now we adjusted that, so let's kind of take a look at our numbers. So we got 600,000 people. They're probably not all students, though, right? I apologize if I can't type very well. All right, so here's where you got to do a lot of experimenting. All right, there are so many different ways of targeting on Facebook that you're going to want to play around with it. So you may want to create multiple different audiences. So one of the first things you can simply look at is, okay, if I search for student, what am I getting here? So I got a bunch of different things. People that maybe they put their job title as student. I mean, that can sometimes be a good thing to target. Interests. I don't know that being interested in the word student makes a lot of sense, but it'll tell you over here on the side what the description of each of these categories is, right? So these are people that listed their employer as student. So those are pretty broad ones. So maybe we want to look at something a little more specific. Maybe we want to actually look at people who have who are enrolled, at the different schools. So here we can have, people who are interested in St. Louis University, so that might give us a better targeting. But even better, we can start to look at people who are actually listing that as their school, right? So we're getting a little bit more narrow. So why don't we select a few of these? So schools, we want Washington University. That's probably got some college students. Yep, and that's what we're going to do now, right? So we type in St. Louis University. So there's that one, 311,000 people in that category. Okay, we got University of Missouri St. Louis. So I know there's other schools. I'm not going to go through all of them right now. But if we go back and we look at our audience, now we've narrowed it down to 20,000 people, right? So this is much more targeted. Now we're getting into that range that's actually useful to most of us. However, we might want to take it even further, right? So now we have, okay, we know these are people between the age 18 and 30. They've listed these as their schools. Maybe not quite, they might not all be currently enrolled, but there's a good chance they are. And so maybe we want to go a little bit further. So what we can do is we can come down here and click on either exclude people, or we can narrow our audience. So this is how these work, right? If we put something further in here, into this add demographics, interests, or behaviors, anybody that fits into that new category we just added will be lumped in, right? So if I put like an interest in soccer in here, it's going to add anybody who has an interest in soccer, not people that are in those schools. So the way I narrow it is I would say I want to narrow my audience by clicking this one, and that means now they have to match both, right? So now if I put in soccer, and let's see here, soccer moms, you can target soccer moms, isn't that great? So let's see. So let's just go ahead and, so association football, quote unquote soccer, that's what they call it in the US. All right, so now that we've selected that, what that means is that these are people who have listed these schools, they're in that age range, they're in St. Louis, and they have an interest in soccer. So you can see that number dropped down, right? So that's how you really narrow your audience, is you think about what are the combinations. That's where that avatar becomes so useful, because you've already defined a lot of this stuff ahead of time. You don't have to guess, you can just come in here and look for it. So now we have an audience of 5,800 people. Now we're getting into our sweet spot, okay? My rule of thumb is I generally try to have more than 1,000, but less than 10,000, even a lot of times less than 5,000 people on a list. With the reason just being simply that I can create really customized advertising for somebody if I have a couple of these things defined, and I don't want it to be such a broad audience that advertising doesn't make sense to everybody in there. So 5,800 people is a pretty good audience, but let's see if we can narrow it any further. What's one other interest we should look for? Any suggestions?
Came from out of state.
Okay, let's see if we can find that. So, well, I'm trying to think if there is a, here, let's look at this. Okay, so where you can maybe get that specific thing you're looking for here is this one. So you can say everyone in this location, people who live in the location, people who are traveling. So this isn't quite, I think, what you were asking, but where this could be useful is when people are coming to visit colleges. So if you like to work with students, maybe you can target people that are 17 or people who have children that are that age, and then say, people who are traveling in this location, right? So that's another way to kind of tweak this, right? So, and I understand, like, there's so many options here. Like this honestly, I still don't know. I mean, I'll never know all the different things you can target on Facebook because there's like tens of thousands of them, right? And they change them all the time, which can be kind of frustrating because you find an audience like, oh, cool, this particular thing, and then Facebook decided it was too creepy and they eliminated it as an ad option, right? Because what's bound to happen is somebody goes, oh, somebody bought pain medicine, and then they write an ad that says like, I know you just bought pain medicine, and they're like, no, don't tell them don't tell them we know all this stuff, right? Saw another hand over here.
Yes, I think you kind of just answered it. So like Facebook, when it's deciding who is part of the categories that you select, it's not because the Facebook users have like self-identified themselves that way. It's like using its algorithms to determine that.
It's some of both, right? So there are, like, anything you've ever done on Facebook, it's considered here, right? So if you've liked certain, so you can, for instance, if a page has enough fans, you can often target the fans of that page, right? So if you can actually target Cardinals fans, for instance, and that's how they know. but it also then combines it with a whole bunch of other data. So Facebook will look at your browsing history. So even if you want to try to hide that stuff, they kind of find it in a lot of ways. They look at what you've clicked on. So if you've clicked on articles that tend to be about certain topics, they can see that. They buy data from other companies, so they have credit card data. They have even some of the databases that the library provides access to for us, like Facebook also uses that information. So it's kind of a combination of both. And so yeah, things you've done on Facebook are definitely included in there, but it's a lot more than that, right? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and leave the audience alone for now. So just the idea here is we've created, people who are probably in college, interested in soccer. And so now that we've defined it, and you could have named it ahead of time, but you want to name your audience. So this is where, if you only have a few audiences, not a big deal. If like us, you're creating hundreds of audiences over time, you might want to have like a specific naming process. So you might want to start with, where are they? So you might say St. Louis, 50 mile radius. All right, and then put one of those bars in there, put a slash or something, and then we're going to say 18 to 30 listed STL school or college, and then interested in soccer. Okay, so now when we come back, we're going to know exactly who this audience is. And for the sake of our demo, I think we'll go ahead and create it. One last thing I'm going to show you before we kind of wrap up this little audience demo is down here. This is one of the more powerful options that you have. So have you ever seen an ad where it shows you the ad, but above it, it tells you who of your friends has liked that page? Is that familiar to everybody, right? This is how you use that feature. So if you come into connections, you can decide, okay, people who have liked my page. So one of the things Facebook does now is that they don't show all your posts to everybody who liked your page, right? They only show it to like a small percentage of who liked it. So if you have something you want to make sure everybody who liked your page sees, and they see it a bunch of times, if there's like an event you're promoting, you can target them. So you can target just the people that like your page. Now, if I selected this right now, what it's going to say is, okay, people who liked my page who also fit all those other characteristics, right? So that's going to be really narrow. But that can also be useful if you have a page with thousands and thousands of likes, but you only want to target people with a certain interest. This is how you screen it out. The next is friends of people who like your page. So this is one of my favorite targeting features, because this is what shows the ad and says, hey, your friend likes this page, right? So that's some strong social proof. You're going to get a lot more people interested in you if their friends are also already interested in you. So that's a nice feature. And then last thing on this particular category is you can also exclude people who like your page, right? So if you have something you don't want them to see, like you're going to say, hey, like my page, you don't need to show people who already like your page to like your page, right? A couple other options, you can do things with apps. Probably most of you don't have an app, so we'll skip that. And then events, this is kind of a newer one. You can, people who have responded to your event you can target, and you can also exclude those people. Yep.
What's the name of that box again? I'm sorry.
This is connections, this box at the bottom, yep, just called connections. It's the very last thing when you're in your audience builder, okay? And then we won't even go into advanced today, but I mean, you kind of get the point that there's so many ways to tweak these things, right? All right, so we're going to go ahead and save that audience. We didn't actually add any connection on there. So we should have an audience now of, as we see, 5,800 total people, right? So that's the one we're going to save, and we're going to leave that alone for now. So I believe that takes us through the first section of the training today. Let me just double check my notes. So looks like we got all that taken care of. So at this point, I want to see if anybody has any other questions about this real quick, and then we'll take a break. Yep.
So obviously these people are not your friends on Facebook because the audience is huge. Do they see, this is just an advertisement that comes to them. They don't see any kind of interaction with each other or anything. They just see the advertisement. Correct?
Okay, yeah. So if you're scrolling through Facebook news feed and you see a sponsored post, it just says sponsored, that would be what you can put in front of somebody, right? So the more complicated answer is that there's all different kinds of ads, right? So there are some where like they might see that somebody's liked the page. There's others where they won't see that, right? So yes, these are all, they're not necessarily your friends. They could be. If you targeted interests your friends have, they can certainly be in the list. That's not excluded. But these are generally strangers. You know, a lot of times you're targeting people that haven't heard about your business yet, and you're getting in front of them and staying in front of them. Is that kind of what you're asking, or what's your specific question there?
That is what I'm asking, but also do they kind of, because you said that they can see if someone likes it. So you obviously have more validity with people who like it, because then it shows that, you know, it's popular, it's something that people like.
Correct, yeah. So that's if you use that feature where you target the friends of people who have liked your page. That's where it'll show, you know, oh, you know, Susie Q liked this, and that's why they're seeing it, right? So there is a feature on Facebook where you can look at why you're targeted by an ad. So it'll tell you. So if you're ever like, why am I seeing this? You can click the button and find out, you know, what Facebook knows about you that they're targeting, right? So if you use the friends feature, it's just kind of already telling you. It says, you know, hey, your friends like this page, and yeah, that's you know, anytime you have social proof, you know, reviews, people who have liked your page already, like those are great things to use, because yeah, they show that you're more trustworthy, right? Question back there?
Can you also target like groups? Say you have, I don't know, animal sanctuary. I'm kind of making this up.
Sure.
Okay, so you have an animal sanctuary, and it's, you know, spay and neuter season, and you want to get the message out. You know, you're doing an advertisement to do something about that. And can you target like groups of people that already like animals? Or?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of the targeting is actually based on that kind of stuff, right? So you can target people that own pets, certain kinds of pets, I believe, so dog owners, cat owners, that kind of stuff. Because again, they have credit card data, so they can see that you buy dog food, you buy cat food, right? You can target people who have liked certain kinds of pages. Facebook even puts people into categories based on what they click on. So if you've clicked on a bunch of articles about dogs or cats, they might lump you in there as well. So you really, I mean, and that's what can be frustrating about this, is that there's so much data that it's overwhelming, right? And you can see, like, I typed in the word soccer, and then like soccer wasn't exactly word for word in there, but there was like 6 different categories of it, and it's like, which one do you pick? So a key rule of marketing that we didn't really talk about is just testing things, right? So you create one audience, but you might create a second or third, and then try all of them and see, okay, who responds in the first week, right? What kind of views do I get? And then you know which one's the best one, right? So you do have to experiment a little bit. Yeah, probably anything you can think of, you can target on Facebook, which is, again, kind of creepy, but that's how it works, right? Yep.
Can you choose like different groups so you know which one's working, as opposed to having, you know, the 18, 20, or 30-year-old, you know, having different categories under the same person? Can you create like a group at a certain age, like with dogs or with cats?
Sure, I mean, you can define audiences however you want. Yeah, you can have a million audiences in here, right? So it is a balance between, you know, doing too much of that and you know, what's useful. So usually like maybe 4 or 5 is a good starting point to test things, and then, you know, kind of scale it back from there. Question over here? Yep.
You mentioned that when you go on, you wonder how come you're receiving those,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, email or ads. And because I'm a friend of Susie Q and I liked it, now I'm getting it
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a friend of Susie Q. How can I get myself off of getting those things where I'm targeted over and over and over?
Well,
Because I like it and I'm a friend of Susie Q, that means I want to continue to.
they do give you a feature where you can say you're not interested in an ad, because they don't want to waste a company's money if you're just like, I don't want to see this anymore. So there is a button where you can say, so here's the thing, is you can say, I don't want to see this stuff from this company anymore, and you can kind of get away from it, but you can't really change what Facebook thinks they know about you very much. I think you can suggest things to them, but they're always going to be guessing and trying to figure that out. But you can go in and say, like, this ad is not useful to me, and explain why, and then they'll stop showing you that content.
Okay, so I think you say, don't send me anything else about Advil, right?
Yeah, you can tell them you don't want any more Advil ads. So I'll tell you what, let's take a break. I know there's a bunch of questions. If you want, I'm gonna stay up here during the break, come up and ask me, but it's about 10. Yeah, let's go to about 10 after. So if we can be back in our seats by 10 after. And anybody has a question, feel free to come up front. Yeah. No. The stats really quickly, just so everybody knows kind of why Sorry if this is blocking anybody's view over there. So this is kind of why we want to focus on video now. So you've probably noticed if you're on Facebook, Facebook is becoming more and more focused on video. And Mark Zuckerberg has even said that within a year or two, they might be exclusively basically video. So you really won't see a lot of links beyond video. So the reason for that, 55% of people watch videos online every single day. That's only going up. That number will be closer to 100% in another year or two. A third of all online activity is spent watching video. So even though you're on there doing your banking and all that, a lot of your free time is spent watching video. A lot of consumers are going to prefer video under 60 seconds, but I will tell you this, that is up front, right? So once they've seen a couple of your videos, they don't have to be that short anymore. It's just like getting to know somebody, right? You want to give them a chance to get to know you a little bit and then move on, but then once they're sort of bought into you and your business, you can talk to them longer than that. So you don't have to feel like every video you make is under 60 seconds, but I would start there. 85% of Facebook videos watched without sound, right? So let's make sure we have subtitles as often as possible. It is an extra step. It can be a little bit complex, but if you add subtitles to your video, you're going to get much longer view times because people can actually just read what you're saying. The big reason for that is we watch stuff on our phones a lot more now, right? So a lot of Facebook is done on the phone, and so if it's auto playing without sound, you want to make sure they can read it. On average, 2.6% or times more time on your page with video than without. So that's more of like a website stat, the same thing for your Facebook business page. And then if you use video in your marketing, you're going to see your revenue growing 49% faster than non-video users, which over time can be a huge competitive advantage. So one stat we don't have on here, but I think is really interesting, is that of all of the business pages on Facebook, only 5% are actually using the advertising platform, right? So this is really why we're so excited about Facebook advertising right now, is that only 5% of businesses that have set up a page, so that's not even 5% of all businesses, just the ones that bother to set up a business page, are actually using the advertising. So what that means is that a couple years from now, once they're all on there, the prices are going to go up and up and up. Facebook has already maxed out how much ad space they have. They can't really put more ads in front of you because it would be too annoying. So now all they can do to make more money is just raise the prices on those ads, right? So the more people that want to use it, the higher the prices are going to get. So now is the time to take advantage of this, especially video advertising. There have been plenty of examples where we've had costs of like 3 cents for 10-second views. Right? So 10 seconds, not a long time, but if your video is only 60 seconds, that's, almost there's a sixth of it, obviously, right? So for 3 or 4 cents to get somebody to watch that much of you talking or about your business, like that's extremely cheap. You're not going to run a TV ad for anything like that, right? So right now is the big opportunity. And again, the more engaging you are, the lower those costs get. So it's not unheard of to see people spending a penny to get people to watch 10 seconds or more of their video. So that's pretty exciting. And that's 10 seconds or more, those people might have watched the whole thing. All right, so what we want to do is show you first kind of how we've gone about setting up to make, somewhat professional looking video. You don't have to have the fanciest stuff. I will say right now, it's more important to simply make it and put it out than it is to make it look perfect. So don't spend all your time trying to get set up, to make the best possible video. Just focus on getting it done. However, even with your cell phone, you can do a couple simple things to make your video look really professional compared to just setting up a phone. And you've all seen that. You turn on your webcam on your computer and you got all your messy desk behind you and that kind of stuff, right? The camera's not all that good in your computer, so it's really grainy. That's still better than nothing. So those people are still making money, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But you can do a couple quick things to improve it. So a couple things I want to mention that are really important to making a video. First is going to be proper lighting and backdrop, right? So this is just a snapshot from the video that I made. This is literally a small kind of almost like closet in the basement of the T-Rex building where I store my case coolies. We move the case coolies to one side. We put up a piece of gray paper that you can buy on Amazon, and we set up this little setup I have over here that I'll show you in a second, and it made much nicer video. So first is proper lighting and backdrop. Again, it doesn't mean you have to spend money. One of the things to think about with lighting is you want whatever's closest to natural light. All right? So these kind of overhead lights in here, they're not bad. This lighting is not actually all that far off, but the closest you can get to natural sunlight, the better. That's what's going to make you look the best possible. The other thing you want to make sure of is no shadows. So if you were filming in this room, this light is right over your head, right? So if you're looking at me or if I'm seeing you, like everybody has shadows over their eyes right now. That doesn't look very good on video. So you want to make sure you set things up so that the light is shining towards your face as much as possible. If you're going to use natural light, an easy way to do that is to sit in front of a window and film, put the camera in front of the room, in front of the window facing in, and that'll get the light on your face. Question?
What about filming outside?
Sure, so you can film outside too. That can be tricky, again, because if you got the sun up here, you can get some even worse shadows because it is such a powerful light source, obviously. So you can do it. You can also set up lights outdoors, but I would just think about the time of day. So again, you want to have the light shining towards you and put the camera between you and the light source, right? But yeah, you can do all kinds of cool stuff outside. One of the challenges you're going to run into outside is this number 2, which is you want to have clear sound. So I know I just said a lot of people they watch video without sound, right? But the ones that don't, you want to make sure your sound is as clear as possible. It's not the hardest thing to do. There's 2 easy things you can do, and that's to not spend money on this. You can spend a lot of money buying some fancy mics. Number 1 would be using another cell phone, right? So a second cell phone, it has a little microphone, obviously you're picking up your voice. It's not the best, but if you get it close enough to your mouth, you're going to get a nice clear recording of your voice. Versus if you set up a camera and it's even just a few feet away, like I have my cell phone recording this right now, that's not picking up my voice very well. It's getting this really echoey, weird sound. It's getting all the background noise. So I'm wearing this little lapel mic and I've got another phone in my pocket, I'm recording it. If you're doing a talking head video like this, excuse me, you could also have, you could tack it to the ceiling and hang the phone from a string and just hit record on your other phone. Like that's what some people have done, right? So you don't really have to spend anything if you have a second phone to use. A little lapel mic like this costs about 15 to 20 bucks on Amazon. So I'd strongly recommend that. That is good enough for what we're doing right now. You can go into spending tens of thousands of dollars on sound equipment and get the clearest possible sound ever, but this is good enough. Yep.
Could you spell that?
Lavalier mic.
Yeah, I thought you said Pelmont. Lapel.
Well, so lapel, yeah, like lapel, like it's on your shirt lapel, but it's a good question actually. They're called lavalier mics. So it is okay. So is it on here?
Yep, not the next one.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. And then the last thing to consider on your video is a no-brainer. Is just be really smart about what you're doing in it. Since you are going to focus on shorter videos initially, I would try to cut, so write out your script, put all the information in there, and this is, how a lot of good writers would write anything, and then go through and cut out whatever is extraneous, right? So the more value you deliver in 1 minute, the better. So if you have a 1 minute video and somebody watches and they're like, man, that's amazing. If you're a cleaning company and you can give 3 really good cleaning tips in 1 minute, they're going to watch it, they're going to be excited about you, right? If it takes you 5, they're not going to give you the time of day to listen to it. So make sure your content is intelligently written, scripted out ahead of time, be as detailed as you can, but also be succinct. All right, so we're going to go in a little more depth on the lighting, and so I'm actually going to show you my setup in just a second. So number 1 is there's a good backdrop. Interestingly enough, like this wall right here actually would probably be a great backdrop. You don't necessarily need to go out and buy one. But what doesn't make a very good backdrop is just your standard white wall, right? I mean, you can see a lot of imperfections. A lot of times they got scrapes and stuff on them. So in what he's got there on the left is actually what we've bought. It's just a big old roll of paper. So it's really not, not very exciting or fancy. It's just gray paper. What you do is you roll it out and you basically tack it to the wall, or you can get a stand and hang it from it. That's just going to make it so that there's nothing distracting behind you. And I'll even show you a little lighting trick to get that effect where he's got that little kind of glow behind him. So you want to make sure that you have a nice backdrop. Again, use a natural light, but avoid shadows on your face. So you can see kind of in both of those there, like there really aren't any shadows on that guy's face. This is was it from Wistia? Yeah, so Wistia is I think a video hosting website, but they have, write that down actually, Wistia. They have a ton of useful content on how to make video. So if you want to, Wistia, so W-I-S-T-I-A.
Thank you.
Yep. And that's actually where we taught ourselves most of the stuff. So if you're like, oh, I couldn't keep up with it, you go there and you're going to get the same kind of education we got. And then Another one is choosing your environment based on your message, right? So you can see in the second one, he is in an office, but he's still lit properly. He's still the focus of that image. And it might make sense if you're talking about an office setting to be in an office setting, right? So back to the question about shooting outside, if you're a landscaping company, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be sitting in an office talking about what you do, right? So make sure that your setting makes a little bit of sense there. Just keeping those other first two aspects in mind. All right, and so this is where that point about the lavalier mic. So this little mic that I'm wearing, I've got plugged into a phone in my pocket, and obviously the wire runs through your shirt, so that way it doesn't look as distracting. It's a little clip-on, costs about $20. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of options on Amazon. So you can get some with nice long cords, some with short cords. I got a little splitter, so I can actually use 2 mics in one phone now. So if I'm doing an interview, which is a really cool video to create, I can have both people wearing a mic that way. The second one is kind of tricky. So for us, we're lucky. The little basement room that we have doesn't get a lot of noise, so it's actually a good spot to do recording. But you do want to be careful about noise. There's kind of 2 main things to consider there. Number 1 is background noise. So if you're in an office, there's a lot of commotion. If the AC turns on and it's really loud, or if they're testing the fire alarms. I'm surprised we haven't had one yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen at some point, right? If they're testing the fire alarms, you don't want that to ruin your video right in the middle. So you want to make sure you're in a noise-free environment as much as possible. The second thing to consider is you don't want to be in a room that's really echoey, right? So a lot of times, like a conference room or something might be a good place to set up. But if you're talking and your voice, you can hear it kind of bouncing off the walls, that's probably not the best spot because it's going to get picked up by the microphone. The way to improve on that, if you don't have somewhere else to go, is just put some stuff in the room that absorbs sound, right? So you can hang a blanket on the wall, right? Because what's happening is the sound's just bouncing off of hard surfaces like go. And actually in this section is where the video section is as well. So if you've uploaded a video to your page organically, you'll still have access to it. Anything you've ever posted is going to be accessible through your ad manager. But if it's a brand new one, you can come in here to the video section and you just click upload video. And this isn't my computer, so I don't have a video here. I guess I could try to find one, but all right. So far today what we've accomplished is we've kind of figured out who our audience is, and we've set them up in Facebook. So at this point you should have that saved in there if you're going through the step by step. You've got a video produced, and so this is a sales video. So what we're going to be talking about today, here's what we're going to try to demonstrate in the next 45 minutes. So it's going to be a lot of technical stuff. We're going to be doing a demo mostly in the back end here. What we're going to do is we're going to put up a first ad with the video targeted at the audience we made. All right, that's kind of the first easiest step. And then we're going to create a new audience based on who has watched that video. Okay? So this is where this is actually fairly advanced. So if you're actually able to do this on your end, you're ahead of where a lot of marketing companies even are, because this is a feature that's only been around for maybe 8 months or so on Facebook. And I really have not seen, I'm always looking at how are people targeting me, because I think that stuff's interesting. And I haven't seen many people actually use this feature. So this is a big opportunity. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up that first ad. We're going to show them our sales video. And then the idea is we're going to track who watched it so we can keep staying in front of the people who are most interested. And then we're talking about how to set up an ad targeting that audience. So a lot of steps here. Again, if you feel like you're getting lost as we go through it, we are going to I actually already have made a video of how to do this particular thing, and I can share that with you. We're going to find out if we can share our total recording as well. But I'll make sure to do some follow-up afterwards to get you more step-by-step on this stuff, all right? So we're back in our ad manager here. And so what we want to do now is we're going to go back to the main page, and we're going to start creating an ad. So we're going back to Ads Manager. And there are lots of places from which you can create an ad. You could start here and click Create Campaign. We're going to go ahead and just start up here with this button because it's the most obvious. So you want to go ahead and click Create Ad. All right. So there are a bunch of steps in here. The one that we have already done is the second step, which is the audience, because we already created the audience. So I'm going to show you how to pull that back up in a second. What we want to do first, though, is choose an objective for our campaign. All right, so as you can see, there's like 8 or 9 or 10 objectives in here. Facebook seems to change these about every 6 months, so sometimes new ones pop in, sometimes old ones disappear. Just to go over a couple that I like to use in particular, one of the most straightforward is traffic. Basically, traffic allows you just to try to get people to go wherever you want them to go. So it could be a link to a certain page. It could be open up the messenger to start a conversation, things like that. You probably never use app installs because you're probably not selling an app. Engagement means you're trying to get people to comment on your post, like your post, that sort of thing. Conversion is a little bit more complex. If you have a landing page where you're tracking who's actually signed up, you can use conversions. The reason to do something like that is that Facebook will then try to be smart about getting people that have, okay, so if somebody has converted, Facebook looks at them and says, who's like that person? And I'm going to show your ad more to that person, right? So for instance, if you have a landing page, you're trying to get people to download an ebook or something like that, conversions can be helpful. You'll see down here video views. That's if you're just strictly trying to get them to view your video. You're not really worried about sending them somewhere else. And then another one is lead gen on here. There is a feature in there where you can actually put up a form right in the Facebook newsfeed and people can sign up for your stuff without ever leaving Facebook. We're not going to go over a lot of those today, but just to give you an idea how a few of them work. So I think today what we're going to look at is traffic. So what we're assuming here is if you have a sales video, you probably have a page on your website where people can go buy whatever it is you're selling. And so we're going to try to drive them to that page. So let's just call this campaign, let's call it sales for now, that's fine. And again, whenever you name things, you want to try to be as accurate with your name as possible so you can find them later. All right, so now we're into the ad set. So there are 3 levels when you're creating a Facebook campaign. At the top level, you have the campaign and the objective. So that was that first step. There's not too much to that. Ad set is a lot more complicated. So what we're looking at here is we're first going to be looking at, where is the traffic going? So we're going to send it to a website or messenger. You can also send it to an app. We're going to get to audience. So there's offer in here. We're not going to do much with this, but just so you know what it is. Has anybody ever sold through Groupon? Anybody tried Groupon before? Okay, you're familiar with Groupon? This is basically Facebook's version of Groupon. You can put out an offer on there that says like, get $60 worth of food for $30, right? And people can claim that offer. So that's what offer means. If you're not going to be offering something like that, just skip that part. Then you get to audience. We already created our audience, so we're just going to be uploading it. Placements. Placements is referring to where is your ad going to show. So it can show in the news feed. It can show on the side, right? So on the side, kind of over on this side of Facebook, you'll see ads over there. It can show in the audience network, which means there's a bunch of websites that have partnered with Facebook and they sell Facebook ads. They don't have to sell their own. So you've probably seen that. You're on another website and you see an ad you had previously seen on Facebook. You can show them there. You can also show them on Instagram. So we'll cover that a little bit when we get there. And then budget and schedule. So I know I had a couple people asking me earlier about how do you determine how much money goes into it, and that's where we'll determine that. So that's the ad set. So let's go ahead and go over that, and then we'll talk about the details of the ad section when we get there. So again, you probably want to give it a name. So we'll say sales in St. Louis for now. All right, so the first thing we're doing is we're going into the audience. So you remember what we did earlier is we created a saved audience, right? Like I said, you can create a new audience every time you create an ad if you want to. And if you do that, you do have the option to save it as you go. But we already made it, and that's the way I like to do things. So we're going to go ahead and say use a saved audience. And this first one is the one we just made. So we're going to go ahead and load that up, right? So as you remember, close that out. As you remember, we had 5,800 people in there. It's saying 6,800 now. These numbers seem to fluctuate kind of back and forth. One of the reasons for that is probably the fact that we're currently targeting Instagram. So there are more people that maybe aren't on Facebook that are on Instagram. So it might pull in some extra people there. But this is the same audience we had earlier that's predefined. And what we're going to look at over here is your estimated daily results, what you might actually get from showing an ad here. These are total guesses. This is Facebook just trying to give you kind of a rough idea. They don't mean much, but the one that tends to be somewhat accurate is your reach. So what this is saying is based on how much money we're spending, and it automatically puts in $20 a day down here in budget. We'll get to that in a second. But based on spending $20 a day, you can expect the people in this audience, anywhere from 650 of them up to 2,500 of them, to see that ad each day. So that's one of the things about the audience size, is if you have a really big audience and you want people to see your ad at least once a day or once every couple days, you got to spend a lot more money. So in this case, about half the audience could see the ad each day. So they might see it once, not the next day, and then they'll see it again the following. So it just depends on how frequently you want to get in front of them. My general rule of thumb would be, they want to see your stuff maybe once a day, maybe twice a day. Anything above that is pretty aggressive and can get pretty obnoxious. And you can also have stuff that you just want to kind of show up once a week, right? So you just put a few bucks in it, just kind of happens to be out there every now and then, and that way you stay a little bit top of mind. So keep an eye on that reach number. That's how you determine that. I've found that this link clicks is like total guesses, so I wouldn't really put much weight on those numbers there, because they don't even know what you're linking to or what your video is yet. So I don't know how they know how many people are going to click on it, but those are just based on historical data. All right, so that's what you know about your audience. Then you're gonna scroll down and you have placements. All right, so if you don't click on anything here, what you're gonna find is that this is gonna be shown on all of the things that would be included here, right? So it's going on in Facebook, it's going on Instagram, it's going on the Audience Network, and they recently added Messenger. I don't know how much of that's actually happening, but they are gonna start selling ads in Facebook Messenger, so it could show up there as well. Just to show you briefly what editing those placements would look like. Question?
So do you have to have an account in all of those placements for it to be put there, or they just put it out there?
I believe they will still show it on Instagram if you don't have a page, or sorry, an account on Instagram for your business, but I definitely recommend just setting one up. That way, if somebody likes what they see and they want to follow your account, they can. If you don't, then I think if they click on it, I think it'll link to Facebook, but that's kind of messy. So you can, so the answer is you can run stuff on Instagram even if you don't have an account. You obviously couldn't even get to this step without a Facebook page, so everything else would be tied to the Facebook page, okay? And there are certain kinds of ads that won't run in certain places, and Facebook will tell you that if you mess this up and you go to create your ad and it says, hey, you tried to make for instance, if your video is longer than a minute, it can't go on Instagram because there's a limit of 1 minute on Instagram. So if you do that, it'll say, hey, this video is too long. You have to remove the Instagram placement. And I think it pretty much does it automatically with a click of a button. So for now, what I would recommend is if you're trying this the first time, just leave it on the default setting. Don't mess with this. I just wanted to show you some of the steps here if you do want to play with it later. But anyway, you can come in here and you can see that there are all the different options. So this is the feeds. It's going to show up in the news feed and it actually kind of shows you what it looks like. Both mobile and desktop are enabled on here. Within instant articles, they're not using a lot of instant articles on Facebook, but they will show ads in them. It's not eligible for these in streams, and that's where I hate. Has anybody seen that yet, where you're watching a video and it just stops and shows an ad in the middle of it? Yeah, that's in-stream videos. Everybody hates them, so I don't know if they're going to be around for much longer. But right column, that's what we talked about over on the right side of the screen, and then you can get into Instagram, Audience Network, and Messenger. So, yeah.
What's an instant article?
I wouldn't really worry about it, but it's an article that lives in Facebook as opposed to on your own website, and it loads a lot faster. Nobody uses them. So it's something they were hoping that like the New York Times would start using it, because it loads a lot quicker because it's on Facebook, which is nice. So more people more people will wait for it to load if it's quick, right? The problem is the New York Times makes more money if they get you to their website. So they created it like 2-3 years ago. It really hasn't gone anywhere. So there are some people using it, that's why it's an option, but I would almost probably just unselect it. It's not a big deal. Anyway, so what I would just recommend doing is just sticking with the standard placements, automatic, and then once you've run a few ads and gotten more comfortable with this stuff, you can experiment there. And again, overall, that's kind of my rule of thumb when you start anything is do the simplest version first and then improve over time. Right? So even though you might say, well, I don't think a lot of my audience is on Instagram, that's fine. Just go with the normal one so you try it, get used to it, and then you can make those changes later. All right, so we had questions earlier about where do I control how much money I'm spending. The budget and schedule is where you're going to do that. So as you can see here, you can set it for daily budget or also lifetime budget. You can say how much money I want to spend over a course of a couple weeks. That's a good option for, like, let's say you're promoting an event and you've got 2 weeks up to that event. You might want to say, hey, I want to put $100 towards this. I want it to run for the next week and a half. That's where you can set that up. I usually run things using a daily budget though. And your daily budget, I believe, you can take it all the way down to $1. So you can literally run ads on Facebook for $7 a week. Are they going to do much? Probably not. One of the things to keep in mind with Facebook is that they do have their own algorithm that works behind the scenes that is always trying to improve the results of your ads for you. So if you don't give that algorithm enough data, it doesn't get much better over time, right? So if you only spend $1 a day, it's not learning much about your audience. Yep.
With your history, what do you say is the minimum to get exposure?
I mean, $1 will do something. I mean, and that's actually if you're new to this stuff. If you're new to it, I would say maybe try $5 a day. You know, so you're spending, you know, up to 35 a week, but you can always turn things off if you don't want to spend any more money. It's just a click of a button. None of this is ever locked in stone. It can always be turned off. So $5 a day is at least going to get you, you know, 300 impressions or so. So 300 people will see your ad once. That's not a lot, but it will give you some data to start working with. Beyond that, I mean, you know, $20 a day is where you can really start to see some things within a few days, right? But if you're just starting, I would start small. Yeah, $1, it really isn't, you know, you're not getting much. You can change that whenever you want. Yeah, you can always edit these things later. Question, yeah?
So if you have a really specifically targeted audience, say, people who are writing a novel,
Yeah.
then a smaller amount. So the more specific you can be about your audience, the less money you kind of have to spend.
Correct, yeah. So that is the power of Facebook in a lot of ways, is how specific you can be with your audience. The one caveat I will say is, like, let's say you had an audience that was 300 people. So it's, you know, somehow it's the 300 people in St. Louis that you think are the ones that are trying to write their own book, for instance, right? There's not a feature in there that's going to say, like, these people for sure are trying to write their own book right now, right? Like, you're guessing based on what pages they've liked, what kinds of money they've spent, you know, things they've bought. So I would just make sure to test different audiences, because that I've seen people fall in that trap where they're like, well, I'm targeting this interest and there's 500 people, like it should just work, right? But it's not foolproof. So there might be settings, you may have targeted a certain interest that you thought was a good idea, but it turns out wasn't what you thought it was, or those people aren't quite the person you thought they were. So if you have really narrow audiences, just make sure you're testing multiple audiences and then you know, going with the ones that work best.
So after you tested it, you could possibly, you know, more focused on audience.
Sure, yeah, you don't have to spend much, right? That's what's kind of, it's another cool feature on Facebook, is that you can try a lot of things for very little money. Yep.
Is there a way to get sort of like a receipt for tax purposes for the advertising you do on Facebook?
Yeah, they'll send you monthly, I think, a report with all the money that you spent on Facebook, and I think you can request that if any time you need it.
How do they charge?
Just by a credit card, is that what you're saying? Yeah, so they do have, I think, once you've gotten up to spending like $200, and every account has different limits, because if it's brand new, it'll be a lower limit. Once you've spent like $100, it'll charge the card. So it doesn't charge it like every day, because that would be, you know, kind of a waste. But usually every 2 weeks if you get up to a certain amount, or if you go a full month and you've been spending like $1 a day, it'll just charge whatever you've spent over that month. So you can expect, I think, like up to 2 charges a month, unless you're, you know, if you're spending hundreds of dollars right off the bat, you know, it might charge you every week. There was another question, or okay, keep going. So beyond this, we also have, so we set daily budget. You can, you know, set your dates, or you can run it continuously. So you have the options there. I don't mess a lot with scheduling. I kind of let things run on a regular basis, but that is a very helpful feature, especially if you have events or something you're promoting. And then down here, we're choosing what we're optimizing for. So we started with the objective of traffic, right? So link clicks makes a lot of sense. We want to send people to the page that we're trying to promote. But you can also do impressions. So this will basically try to show your ad as many times as possible for the money you're spending. So that's not always a good thing, because that could mean it's going to show it to people that maybe don't make as much money because they're cheaper to advertise to, but they're on Facebook a lot, and that might not be your ideal audience. So you got to think about that. But if you have something you're just like, I want people to see this and that's what I want to do, you can try impressions. And then daily unique reach basically means that if you have 6,800 people in this list, it's going to try to show your ad to each of them one time until it runs out of money. So if one guy's on Facebook all day and the next guy's on for 10 minutes, it's going to try to show both of them only once, rather than showing the guy that's on Facebook all day 10 times and the other guy none, right? Because that can happen. That's something that can happen if you do impressions, because the guy that's on there all day, they're going to show him more ads. So with what we're doing, I would start with link clicks. It's kind of a good starting place. And what that's going to do is Facebook's then going to try to use their algorithm to say, hey, who's most likely to click on this post, and how do I show it to those people, right? So as you notice, we changed that budget down to $1. Now the reach is only 35 to 180 people a day, right? So those numbers really dropped off. So just for sake of demonstration, we're gonna leave this at, we'll just leave it at 20 for now. All right, and then a few other things in here. It's charging per impression. You know, unless you're getting advanced, I would leave this bid amount. I would also leave it automatic. You can control your bid, but I don't even mess with that stuff personally. So all this I'm just gonna kind of skip over because this is more advanced. So what we're gonna do is now we've set up our ad set. So all that information we talked about, we've gone through and defined. We have our placements. We've got our audience figured out. We obviously didn't include an offer, and then we did our budget and schedule. So now we're going on to the third part, and this is where we are going to be choosing the video that we uploaded earlier. All right, so in here you can create a new ad, or this is where you can also essentially, so you've seen the feature allows you to boost a post, right? That kind of shows up on the side of your posts on Facebook on your page. If you wanted to boost a post but use more of the advertising features, this is what you can do. So you can come in here and actually pull up a post that exists on your page and then advertise using it. But now you've got the whole audience and budgeting and all that kind of features. We're going to be creating a new ad since we uploaded that video earlier, or pretended to. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pull up my page. Okay, and I'm attached to that Instagram account. All right, so once you have the page, and the reason the page is important is if you have multiple pages, you obviously want to have the right one selected. We made that mistake once, and I had an ad running for like a day that was from like a totally unrelated company, so don't do that, that's confusing. And then what you're going to do is scroll down, and so here's where your different formats come in. So what we're talking about today is a single video, but you do have a lot of options. You can use an image, you can upload the images, or Facebook also has a partnership with a bunch of stock image sites, and you can upload those, those for free from Facebook. They tend not to perform very well because they've seen those stock pictures before, but if you're in a crunch and you're just trying to get something up, you can try that. Carousel is where you have a bunch of different kind of slides. So you've probably seen those before. There's like several, and you can kind of scroll through them. Those can be useful for pointing out several pain points to, things that you're particularly good at helping with. Slideshow. So video obviously performs really well. People like watching video, but if you don't have one, you can take up to 10 images and turn them into a slideshow, add music, that kind of thing. It's more engaging than just a still image, so that can be a good idea. And then collection, which is a little bit newer. I haven't even used this yet, but it's basically a collection of images. It could be things like if you have multiple products you're trying to sell, you can feature them all there. So the one we're going to go with is the single video. And I don't know why that's acting weird. So next section, it says full screen experience. We're skipping that. There's a feature called Canvas you can use, but it's a whole nother complicated step. So we're going to move down here to video. So now that I had selected video, this says video. If I had chosen a picture, it'd say photo. So we're going to go ahead and we could either upload a video from our hard drive, but we already uploaded it, so we're going to click Browse Library. All right. I don't know why it's got the little... Okay, so the reason there's a little exclamation point there is that before I said all placements, right? I didn't remove Instagram, but remember I also mentioned you can't use videos that are longer than a minute on Instagram. So right now it's saying, hey, by the way, if you meant to be on Instagram, you can't. So when we go to save this later, I'll show you. It's going to say you got to remove it, and it'll take Instagram out of our placements. So we got the video, it's in here now. So this is where the thumbnail can be selected. And you remember I told you, the thumbnails are just, they give you kind of random ones, and sometimes they're all kind of garbage. It's like, these are not very exciting, right? Oh, here's a picture of Facebook with my picture in the corner. So you might want to upload your own thumbnail, and you can do that. So you can click here and create, that's the still image I was talking about earlier that you want to start the video with. So that's where you select your own. All right, and then it's still, because this is, well, I'm going to try to see if I can pull up a shorter video because it might not give us this trouble. So the other one was 15 minutes long, so it was taking a while to try to come up with the subtitles for us. So in this one, I think I've already uploaded the captions on it, but you'll see down here it'll give you the options for adding captions to the video. So I'm just going to delete it for now, so I can show you what it looks like. So if you uploaded a video and it didn't have captions, these are the 3 options it gives you. You can upload them yourself. They could already be edited into the video. So if you pre-edited your captions in, you don't need to worry about this at all, just leave it alone. But you can upload a separate file that adds them. You can let Facebook review it, that's the one I talked about where a human's actually going to listen to your video and make sure they all get typed out properly. Or you can generate them automatically. So I'm just going to see how accurate this has gotten. It gets better like every week, right? Because their algorithm gets smarter. And actually this might be because I've generated these before, so I think they're just remembering from there. But you can see like it's actually really accurate, right? No misspellings or wrong words. Oh, finally. Been waiting for that. All right, you can take a break. What's that?
You mentioned a rapper up and coming with
Oh,
your
yeah,
family, and
my
I
cousin.
have one in my family, and I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think that they were related, but not the Churicks, is he?
He goes by Johnny Wayne, my cousin.
No.
Yep, he lives down in Florida, so.
This one lives in St. Genevieve.
St. Genevieve,
Yeah.
Gotcha, yeah.
Do you think he's going to be successful?
He's pretty good, my cousin is. I mean, he studied, I mean, that doesn't mean much. It's funny, it's all about marketing, right?
Right.
Like,
He's online a lot.
yeah, it's just, and the reality is like, it just takes a long time. You just
it
gotta
does.
keep going, and like my cousin, I told him, I was like, hey, he started doing this thing where every Friday he puts out a new song.
Oh, that's
So
a
it
good
just
idea.
makes him keep making music and getting better, but then like he also gets more attention with each one. So
Is he doing a patent on each song? I'm having a hard time with my grandson getting him real ones because it's.
well, all his music is anything you create that's like music wise is automatically copyrighted.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so
Okay, that's good to know.
I believe, but I know like anything you write is automatically copyrighted,
Right, and that's what
right?
he's
So, and
doing.
I think it's the same. So I mean, I don't think he has to necessarily register anything, but he should still at some point, if he's getting successful, talk to a lawyer and just get the real advice, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
I actually spoke with you yesterday.
Yeah.
Called Wallace's office.
Oh, okay, gotcha. You work there. Yeah, we hadn't met because
I
you.
want you to have my card because
Uh-huh.
I am going to jump on this like
Uh-huh.
right away.
Sure.
And I'm taking as many notes as I can, but I don't want to. So if you could just email me like whatever literature you have on.
Yeah.
this.
Well, and I think we haven't finalized it yet, but I think we're going to be working with you guys actually.
I hope so.
Yeah. So
She's
and
super
that'll
excited.
be part of what we'll help with is she can obviously be in it, but we can also work with you as well as part of that. So, but yeah, I'll be happy to send you whatever I can. I mean, there's a few people I'd even recommend just following on Facebook that are kind of experts at these things that you just kind of learn from over time. So yeah, we'll do.
I'm excited.
Cool. All right, well, let's get back to it. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. We got about 20 minutes left, and then we'll take some questions at that point. All right. So the last step you're going to have here, we just went ahead and did the captions. And so this is kind of fun. This would be an example of a bad still image to choose. Well, I look pretty drunk in that one, so I don't depends on what you're promoting, I guess. But like this, this one would be much better, right? Let's see if that switches out. There we go. Now I'm not drunk anymore. All right. So you scroll down. So once you get your captions figured out, sorry, not used to this laptop as much. All right. So here's where we're going to finish out the actual ad itself. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is decide between, are we sending them to a particular page? And if so, we're going to put the link in here. So we'll just throw up one of our old landing pages for a client there. And what it's going to do is it's automatically going to pull some information from that page, right? So the headline and the text are going to be based on what that page said on it. Most of the time, you're just going to go ahead and delete that because it's usually not as good as what you're going to try to write. So you have your page in there, your final destination, and so you'll see over, well, maybe not. Okay, I'm just going to use the buttons. All right, so far you'll see what the ad looks like. And you can see that there's no text on it, it's just my video, and then it has a Learn More button at the bottom. If someone were to click that button, it would take them to that page, right? So we're gonna add a little bit more information here. So there's a few places that you can put text. So let's see. So I'm not going to get into like how to write good copy here, but I will say this: your headline, and this is a traditional rule for hundreds of years now. Your headline is what gets them to watch or read the rest of it, right? Now, video audio plays, so to be honest, you don't necessarily even need a great headline because it's just going to start playing either way. But it will help to get people to stick around a little bit. So just make sure that your headline is compelling and that it matches what's in the video, right? Don't talk about something that's unrelated. So, it could be something like, 3 easy ways to clean your floors. And kind of keep going back to the cleaning company example. But you want to make sure that headline makes sense for the video and that it's accurate, right? So, let's see. How about like, why Square Video rocks on Facebook? Man. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'll show you where that shows up. So, and you can see that right there. So that's the headline that goes right below the video. And then you're going to do the text. The text is going to be the section that comes right above the video, right? So that's where, if you think about how people kind of function as they're scrolling through, a lot of times their eyes will jump down to the headline, they'll read that. If that kind of makes them interested, they'll come up to the text above it, they'll read that little summary, and then they might stick around and watch the rest of the video. If you're using video, I would not put a ton of text above it because it's basically just delaying them from watching the video, and that's what you're trying to get them to do. So let's say like, watch our founder explain why video works so well on Facebook. Okay, and let me show you where that shows up real quick. It's not loading yet. Okay, there we go. So if you were on Facebook Mobile, this is what this would look like, and it would say that above it, and it's got the headline below it, and then my video starts playing, right? And you can see, again, this is a Square video, so you can see how much more that fills up that space. If this was a traditional video, it would only come down to about here. So you're actually getting about twice the real estate on somebody's phone, so it tends to get a lot more attention. So those are the two things that I would recommend filling out for sure. And then if you want, you can also add a little bit more information in this newsfeed link description, right? So this is what would show up underneath the headline. On mobile, most of this, you can show maybe 6 words and it kind of cuts it off after that. But if you're on the newsfeed and you want to have a little bit more of an explanation of what's in the video, you can add to that as well. The next couple things are not really relevant for us. So the display link, URL parameters, we're not really worried about that. One comment I will make, so this is, do I want to track my conversion pixel? Facebook has a pixel feature where you can put a little piece of code on your website. I would highly recommend installing that as soon as you can. We're not going to go over it today, but if you just Google Facebook pixel installation, it's really pretty straightforward. Click a couple buttons, copy some code, and paste it on the back end of your site. The reason for that is that allows Facebook then to track what people do on your site, right? So for instance, if I'm doing that conversion targeting I talked about earlier, you could say, hey, track who actually opts in, who's actually signing up, and then Facebook's able to know who those people are. It doesn't, it doesn't tell you because it's all anonymized, but then they go back and they look for similar people, right? So they go out and they say, okay, those people converted based on that pixel I'm tracking. I want to find more people like it. That's one of the really powerful parts of the pixel. The other really powerful part is when we created those audiences earlier, there was saved audience. That's what we talked about today. There's also custom audience. You can do custom audiences based on a whole bunch of things, but one of the main things you can do is track people that visit your website, right? So let's say you have a client, they tell a friend about you, they Google you, they get on your website, they don't sign up for anything and they leave, right? That's probably somebody you want to get in front of again, right? You don't know who they are, you don't have any information on them, you don't know if that's even happening right now, but it's something to be proactive about if you can. So once that pixel's installed on your site, you can go back to audiences and create an audience that says, hey, anybody that visits my website, I want them to be added to this anonymous list, and then I'm going to show them my ads too, right? So if, even if you don't have much traffic, even if you're like, oh, I only get 50 visitors a month to my site, if there's 10 potential customers in there, that's a great audience to stay in front of. And especially if you're getting hundreds or thousands of views on your site a month, I would definitely recommend installing that pixel. And even if you're not going to use it right away, go ahead and install it soon, because it cannot track anybody until it's there. But once it's there, you can kind of retroactively build lists based on that traffic.
Does Facebook automatically put the buttons at the bottom for like, comment, and share?
Yep, those will always be there. Yep. Yes.
Okay, so this is for one video. Do you have to do this for every video? So if you wanted to put a new video every week or whatever, you would have to do this for every single video?
Anytime you create a new ad, you would do this. You can, we're not going to get into it today, but there's ways to streamline a lot of this that you can. So what I would do is initially, if you're just learning this stuff, do it this way, because you'll learn each of the steps, right? Once you've done it for a couple months, or you've done a few videos this way, then you can start looking at, so for instance, there can be multiple ads within an ad set. So if you're going to target the same people, maybe you've got different ads. So you can go into your ad set and say create new ad, and you skip those first two steps, and then it lives underneath that ad set. So there are ways to optimize it, but again, initially it's all about just learn the steps, right? Okay, so that's basically all that we have to do. So I'm going to show you something as I go to, so as you remember, initially I put that 15-minute video in and it said, oh, you can't put that on Instagram. This one is a lot shorter. So let's see if it says anything. So if you messed up anything, if you're worried, oh, I didn't click the right thing or whatever, Facebook will tell you now, right? All right, so I did not mess anything up, so if I don't delete this, it's going to start showing that video to people that like soccer and that are going to college in St. Louis, right? So I'm going to have to delete that real quick. But so once you're here, you're going to see that your items are confirmed, the ad is in review, and you're going to get a notification later that's going to tell you if it's approved or not. Couple reasons that it might not be approved. One would be that you're advertising something that is illegal. So for instance, when I used to run some ads for Case Cooley, I'm not advertising beer, but I might have said the word beer in the ad. And so they would say, well, if you're advertising beer, it has to be 21 and up, right? So they might flag that. One of their rules that they're not as strict about, but will affect your ad, is if you have a ton of text in the picture. So if you have a picture of a photo in your ad and it's just all text, they might flag that. So there are things that can happen. If that does happen, they will kind of work with you to resolve it. And I have had a few times where they've just started flagging my ads for no reason, and I just have to send a message and oh, you're right, I don't know why it's doing that, because a lot of this is automated. You got to think half of what you're interacting with is a smart computer.
What if you're outdoors and somebody walks behind you? Do you need a photo release for everybody in the background?
I don't believe so. I'm not a video expert, so I'm not entirely sure the proper answer to that question. But my understanding is that if somebody's just kind of walking through in the background and you've made it clear that you're filming, then that's kind of them giving permission at that point. But you'd probably want to ask what's that?
Public place, you're okay?
Yeah, if you're out in public and it's not, you're not deceiving people or tricking them, I think you're fine then. So. But again, you might want to, don't tell. That's not an official response. Talk to a lawyer. Yes.
If you do put up a video and then a day later it'll say boost your post or what have you, will it go to the demographics? What if you've never even chosen and gone through all those steps?
Well, boosting is a really light version of all of this stuff. So there are some audience features you can select from. And I've played around with it the other day, and for some reason it wasn't giving me all of my saved audiences as options. I think it's supposed to be set up so that if you have saved an audience before, you can just boost it to that audience. But mine wasn't. So once you know how to do this stuff, I would not boost things anymore, just because even if you do boost it, there might be settings that you didn't have an opportunity to set and you're not really sure what they're set to. So I would say, just go in here. And did you see earlier when the option was create a new post, but you could also just use an existing post? That is the same as boosting, but then you have all those extra features. So my opinion is like, once you know how to do this, don't ever use boost again, right? Yep.
The ad you create here with the video, does that automatically go onto your business Facebook page as well?
Good question. So these will not show up on your Facebook page as a typical organic post, right? Doesn't mean they won't show up to people who like your page, depending on what your targeting was, but you can exclude those people, right? So when you upload it this way, it's what's called a dark post, which means it's not showing to people unless you chose to show it to them, with a slight catch, which is that if the video does really well, again, Facebook's algorithm wants to show interesting things to people on Facebook. So if you have a really great video and people are liking and they're commenting and they're sharing it, it's going to start to share it organically, show it to people organically as well. So then it could show up to people you didn't target. So that is possible, but it will never show up as a typical post in your page, right? Now, if you went to existing post, then it would have been a post on there, right? But if you uploaded the video to the asset library, which is what we did here, it will not show up as a post on your page.
But if you went from your business page and liked it yourself, would it show up?
Nope. So only if you tell them to post it as a post on your page will it ever show up there, right? So if you wanted to, and if it's a video, you can upload it in both places individually. So it could be an organic post and then also a post through the dark, the dark post, right? But if you're going to do that, you might just want to upload it to your page and then find it in the ad manager and promote it that way.
If you see your ad though, you can share it to, so let's say you're looking through your news feed and you see your ad with maybe your agenda targeting, you can share it to either your personal or also your business page. So that's a way to get it on either of those two places. But.
That's true, yep. Back there again? Yep.
What about trollers? Trolling, like in the comments or
Uh-huh.
is there anything someone's saying bad stuff about you, it's not true or something in the comments?
Yeah, there is actually. So there's an option if it's your ad to hide their comment. What it does is it does not, it's kind of deceitful, but that's how they do it. It does not hide it from the person who made the comment or their friends. So if anybody's friends with the troll, they're going to see the troll's comment, right? But nobody else will see it. So you figure you're hiding it from almost everyone, except for the people that are friends with that person. So, and that's probably for the best, because then if it did delete it directly, then they'd come back at you and probably keep commenting a bunch more times or leave you a bad review. So yeah, if you see anything, and that's, it's probably better not even to respond to them. You can respond in the comments. So if it's, an unhappy customer or something, you want to address it, that can be good, but you can also just hide it. So, yep.
If somebody you target likes it, does it show up on their Facebook page, or it's strictly for that person to see and no one else can see it?
So liking or engaging with the post, if you click share is the only way you can make something kind of save to your page, so to speak, right? So if I click share on it, now it'll show up on my personal page or my business page if that's where I shared it to. If you like or comment, that does not put the post anywhere else, right? It will help the post get spread to more people, right? So if you post something organically and I come and I comment on it and you respond and then my friend comments, Facebook sees that as, oh, we're all interested in the post, and it might show it to more people for free, but it's not going to like plant it in their news feed, right? Other questions? Okay, so I think we're pretty much done. Last step I wanted to show you is just now that you've got your ad up, where would you find it? So you come back to this button here, or actually I think we can just click continue. Yep, so continue will take us back here. And you can see now this is the ad that I just created and it's pending review. And this is right now, so I'm in the ads tab. I can also go back to the ad set tab. So that's what I named the ad set member. And then the campaign as well. These are all my campaigns in my account, and this is the one I just created. So if you come in and you click on them, it kind of takes you to each additional level. And if you want to edit anything, you can edit all of those different levels. You just come and hover over the ad or the ad set, and you click edit. And then that's going to open up the same thing we were just looking at a second ago, and that's where I can go ahead and make changes to that. So I mean, you can actually go back in and switch it from an image to a video, or kind of do whatever you want with it. One thing I will mention though, if you edit your ad, it's going to remove all of the social engagement. So if you had likes and things like that, and you edit the ad itself, all the likes will go away. So be careful, right? So if you have a bunch of likes, that's good social proof. You don't want to necessarily delete that. However, you can change the targeting. So I was talking to a few people up here earlier. One kind of little hack that you can try, which is kind of fun to play with, is there are certain countries in the world that's a lot cheaper to advertise to. You know, places like India or Pakistan, where there's just not as many advertisers. So you can advertise to people for pennies on the dollar compared to the US. So if you have a post that you want to get a bunch of likes on before you show it to your audience, you can show it to them. So you go like India and you show it to English speakers, and it might, you know, hey, here's some tips or whatever. Get a whole bunch of likes. You can get 200 likes for like $5 or $10, to be honest, because it'll show it to tens of thousands of people. And then you just change the targeting back to the United States, and people are like, oh wow, a lot of people liked it. But they all have very foreign-sounding names for some reason, but.
So every time you change the audience, it's going to show who liked it previously?
As long as all you change is the targeting, yeah. Yeah, so you can keep the likes and things like that, yeah. So a way to do that is effective without doing the whole, you know, targeting India or whatever, would be to target it to the people who liked your page first, because they're people that are, you know, already interested in you, and oh cool, she's posting a video, they'll throw a like on there, no problem, and then change the targeting to your cold audience, and now it already has, you know, 20 or 30 likes, couple comments, it's probably been shared organically a little bit as well, so that looks a lot better to the people seeing it. Yep.
What if you don't want to make a video yourself and you take it off the internet, like a soccer video or whatever?
You got to be careful when you're using other people's content, because you got to have the rights to it, right? I mean, if you're talking small scale stuff, it's probably not a big deal. And there's plenty of tools and things where they'll take stock photos or stock video and you can overlay it with text. So there's one called, I've been trying out, it's called Lumen 5, Lumen 5. And it'll take a blog post you've written and pull it up next to a bunch of stock photos, and then you can basically pull out the best sentences from your blog post, kind of the highlights. It'll overlay them over these stock images, add music, and it gives you kind of a cool, you know, like the whole thing where the images move a little bit, you know, so it's pretty subtle. But that way you can turn a blog post into a video in a certain sense. So like those are kind of things you can do that tool's free for now. So as long as you have the rights to it, so that's the only kind of fear, is like you pull a, you know, professional soccer video and you're showing it, and all of a sudden the MLS is suing you. Like that would not be good. So just watch out for that. But there's plenty of places to find stock video, or, you know, or just ask permission. You know, there's a lot of people that they made something and, you know, you think it's cool and you say, hey, you know, would you mind if I promote this? And they might say, well,